Welcome to the fifth video on the sixth meditation. So in the last video, we saw that the senses and the appetite cooperate to help us conduct our lives, to help us survive and preserve our body. But we also saw that given that I don't invent my sensory ideas, that they're not made up by me, they happen to me, that I'm passive, they seem to be coming from outside me, and they seem to be therefore not up to me, but up to God. There was this question, well, why is it that they can lead me astray? How is it that they can lead me astray? I mean, God is perfect, he's not a deceiver, and yet I have this strong propensity to believe my what my sensory ideas tell me. And so how can that be? How can God not be a deceiver, and yet I have this strong propensity to believe in these ideas that don't seem to depend on me? Well, Descartes' idea here is that our bodily equipment is limited and can break down, right? We have sense organs, we have nerve fibers for transmitting signals from various parts of the body to the mind. And usually all of this equipment works pretty well to tell us the best things for us to do to survive. And this is the purpose of our sensory ideas. Their function is to help us to live and find food and avoid danger and get shelter, right, etc. I mean, without these sensory ideas, we would all die very quickly. And then we wouldn't be very perfect at all, right? So it's a very good thing that we have these sensory ideas that don't lead us towards the truth. Because if we didn't have them, well, then we would be dead. And being dead is not a way of being perfect. So it's a good thing that we have them. But why is it that we go wrong? Well, Dick gets it in this paragraph here. So he says, I might consider the body of a man as a kind of machine, equipped with and made up of bones, nerves, muscles, veins, blood, and skin, in such a way that even if there were no mind in it, it would still perform all the same movements as it now does in those cases where movement is not under the control of the will or consequently the mind. So he's imagining a kind of zombie, right? You've got the body of a man, there's no mind there, there's no will there. It's just doing the things that bodies do, but with no will, right? Okay, kind of weird, but I can easily see that if such a body, if one of these zombie bodies suffers from dropsy, for example, so dropsy is a disease where you want to drink water even though it'll harm you, right? So dropsy is a condition where I think it's congestive heart failure, and basically your body keeps wanting to drink water when you're undergoing dropsy, even though it's really bad for you, right? It's just going to make the heart failure worse. And so I can easily see that if such a body, one of these zombie bodies, suffers from dropsy, for example, and is affected by the dryness of the throat, which normally produces in the mind the sensation of thirst, the resulting condition of the nerves and other parts will dispose the body to take a drink, with the result that the disease will be aggravated. So what's the thought here? Well, in the case of this dropsy sufferer, it seems her nature is leading her to harm or to an error, right? Leading her to want to drink water when in fact drinking water would be really bad for her. So it seems like her nature is not perfect, right? Well, how does Descartes respond to this objection? Well, comes here. Well, really, 117 to 119, he's posing the issue. But then it's on page 120 that he gives the answer, or gives a series of observations. And really, those sort of begin on 119 and then they go to 121. So let's focus in on the third observation that he makes in response, and this is on page 120, right around the marginal number 87, it's AT87. He talks about this core nerves and this chord A, B, C, D. I'm gonna read this out. You should maybe pause the video and go back and take a look at 117 to 121. So all of those passages. But I'm going to focus on this one passage from page 120 at the bottom of the page, paragraph that spans 120 to 121. He says, I observe in addition that the nature of the body is such that whenever any part of it is moved by another part, which is some distance away, it can always be moved in the same fashion by any of the parts which lie in between, even if the more distant part does nothing. For example, in a chord A, B, C, D, if one end D is pulled so that the other end A moves, the exact same movement could have been brought about if one of the intermediate points, B or C, had been pulled and D had not been moved at all. In a similar fashion, when I feel pain in my foot, physiology tells me that this happens by means of nerves distributed throughout the foot, and that these nerves are like cords which go from the foot right up to the brain. When the nerves are pulled in the foot, they in turn pull on the inner parts of the brain to which they're attached and produce a certain motion in them. And nature has laid it down that this motion should produce in the mind the sensation of pain as occurring in the foot. But since these nerves, in passing from the foot to the brain, must pass through the calf, the thigh, the lumbar region, and the back and the neck, it can happen that even if it is not the part in the foot, but one of the intermediate parts which is being pulled, the same motion will occur in the brain as occurs when the foot is hurt. And so it will necessarily come about that the mind feels the same sensation of pain. And we must suppose the same thing happens with regard to any other sensation. Okay, so what's the thought here? Well, the idea is we've got these nerves that run from our foot to our brain, and it's through the nerves that we know what's going on with the foot. But problem, I mean, and that's that has to do with the way our machine is set up. We're extended things, and so we have to have these cords, these nerves that connect the various parts of our machine, and that's because we're extended things. But if you injure, your back, it can happen that you injure the cord that's going down to your foot, and so your equipment breaks down in a certain way, and your body indicates that your foot is in pain when in fact your foot is not in pain. You've just injured the cord in your back that goes to the foot, right? And so the thought is, well, the way your sensory or bodily ideas are produced, they're produced through how your machine is affected. And your machine is set up in the best possible way. It's set up in the way so that you have accurate information about which parts of your body are damaged, say. But things can go wrong because of the way machines have to be set up as extended things. And, you injure your back and you get a pain in your foot, that's not things working correctly. But it's the best way that things can be set up, given that you have this physical body, this machine that you're attached to. And so similarly, what's happening in the case of dropsy is the dropsy patient is set up to feel thirst when certain nerves, say in the stomach or wherever, are stimulated. But what's happening is those nerves are getting stimulated even when water wouldn't be beneficial to the dropsy patient. And so the dropsy patient feels dryness of the throat even when drinking would be bad, because they're cross signals, right? The nerves have gotten mixed up and are giving a signal that isn't actually conducive to health. By and large, this doesn't happen. By and large, the body is set up in the best way possible, but sometimes it does, because we're physical things that decay. That's just part of what it is to be a physical thing. Part of the kind of imperfection that physical things have. And so that's why we have sensory ideas that can lead us astray. So we're set up in the most perfect way possible. Our senses are set up in the most perfect way possible, but things can go wrong, and the body can decay, and we can have ideas that lead us astray because of the nature of our physical body. Okay, so that's Descartes' answer to the challenge of why our sensory ideas can lead us astray.